All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Spring Vegetable Gardening. This presentation is brought to you by the Bob Jones Nature Center, the City of Southlake, Arlington Water Utilities, and Tarrant Regional Water District. And so before we get started, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping and tell you about some things and talk to you a little bit about some of our sponsors. And so if you have any questions for our speaker throughout the entire presentation, you can type them there into the control panel, into the chat box, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the presentation. If the speaker doesn't get to your question at the end of the presentation, we'll send you an answer through your email that you use to register for this webinar. And also, if you look in the control panel, there's an area where you can download handouts. There's a few handouts there that you can download. And then after we're done, I'll also send out an email with all those handouts. And those are just supplemental information and some stuff that the speaker is going to talk about. And so our speaker today is Harold Annis. He's a Tarrant County Master Gardener, and he is the owner of a really impressive home garden. My name is Heather Bass, and I'm a conservation coordinator with Tarrant Regional Water District. And for attending this presentation, you can get a rebate for the Go and Grow gardens. And so what this is a, there's two different gardens, a Texas Tough Native Garden and a Home Harvest Edible Garden. You can find them both at rootedin.com. And these are just pre-made gardens. Each one has 24 plants in it, and they cost $75. And if you check your email after you get done with this, you can see how to get a $25 rebate on that. So that makes 50 plants for, $50 for 24 plants, which is a pretty good deal. So check those gardens out. And like I said, check your email whenever we're done to get a link how to sign up for that rebate. Okay, so like I said, this presentation is brought to you by Tarrant Regional Water District, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about TRWD. So what TRWD does is maintains 4 area lakes and all of the infrastructure and pipeline that is needed in order to carry surface water from those lakes to our local water treatment plants. And so our cities take that water from us, that raw surface water, and treat it to drinking water standards in their various water treatment plants, and then they provide it to our homes and businesses. And so we have 3 missions there that you can see. And the reason why TRWD might care about doing a spring vegetable gardening presentation for you is that we really care about water conservation and about using water efficiently. And that's because water conservation is a really important water supply strategy, so we can continue to supply water to our growing population here in Tarrant County. And so you can go to SaveTarrantWater.com to sign up for all of our great programs that have to do with water conservation. There's free weekly watering advice you can sign up for that is custom to your location, where every Monday you can get either an email or a text message letting you know how much you should water your lawn that week based on that week's weather. And then you can also, if you're a Tarrant County resident, sign up for a free sprinkler evaluation where a licensed irrigator will come to your house and they will check out your sprinkler system, let you know if there's any water waste, let you know how much water you're using every time you run your sprinkler system. And then you can also find a calendar of events and classes just like this one, and then lots of other videos and water saving tips that are fun to look at. And then another thing that we do in order to provide you with this awesome programming is that we partner with other organizations. And so some of those organizations are the Tarrant County Master Gardeners and Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. And so like I said, today we are partnering with the Tarrant County Master Gardeners to offer you spring vegetable gardening. And our Master Gardener is Harold Annis. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Harold on and let him begin his presentation. All right, Harold, I'm going to give you control now. So you should be able to start sharing your screen. Great. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go away and you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Great. So my name is Harold Ennis. I'm a Tarrant County Master Gardener, and I have been since 2011. I've also taken the advanced training for vegetable gardening, but I also trained with my grandmother when I was going to college. I lived with her, and she had a fairly sizable garden, so had lots of knowledge that she shared with me. Let's get into it here. I'm going to skip these two slides. You've seen them. So today, I wish that we could be in person. It's much more fun. But we're going to talk about, and probably briefly on each one of these, the site where we're going to plant, the sun, that we need sun, the seed, what kind of seeds or what kind of varieties should we plant in north central Texas, the season, when do we plant, what dates are good for planting the various vegetables, and then soil. All of these are important. I'm not sure which one would be the most important, but anyway, here's a picture of my garden in Southlake. It's about 10,000 square feet, and I'll note a couple of things here. There's little two gardens here. One is oriented east-west, and the one looks like Stonehenge in the background is oriented north-south. So, and later we talk about orientation. So that's obviously in the ground. Here's a school garden that I helped do a garden club for Heritage Elementary School. That's in Grapevine. So this is another idea of how you can plant, how you can grow vegetables. And these beds at Heritage, we grow vegetables in these beds. The wood is Western red cedar, and the fill is just a dairy mix from a local supplier of landscape materials. Okay, we'll talk more about that. You can garden in pots, and this particular picture was taken in January. So in the fall, I like to plant tomatoes in pots so that when that early freeze comes, I can roll them into the greenhouse. Or if you have a garage that you can roll them into, that's great. Usually that freeze lasts about 2 days, and then we don't have any more for the next 30 days. So it might be a difference between eating red tomatoes or fried green tomatoes. I like the red ones. Okay, so the site selection. Obviously, you'll hear more that we need 6 hours for most of the hardcore vegetables, if you will, the tomatoes and etc. 8 hours is what I go by. Here's the garden orientation, and I found that it really doesn't make a lot of difference whether it's north, south, east, west. Everything grew. Now my rows are spaced 2.5 feet apart, so that probably has something to do with it. The soil, what kind of soil do you have? And we'll talk about a soil test. So you know, you don't just stick your finger in it and say, well, that's a sandy loam, it's got to be good. Not necessarily. Access, how close is the garden? How easy is it for you to get to it and do work? The drainage is important. When it rains, does it drain? Proximity to trees and shrubs. Trees can really sap the life out of a garden. And water. I have hydrants that are right at the garden, so it's easy to water. And wind protection. I found it in north central Texas. The wind protection is just about as important as insect and rabbit protection. So there you go. I recommend that you start out with a plan. My garden is on an Excel spreadsheet, so I can keep up with what I planted this year and last year and the year before with planting rotation and highlighting errors or successes. So sketch your garden to scale. And note that if you use a trellis, you can really extend your garden. So, you know, a common vegetable that we see on a trellis would be cucumbers, but you can do tomatoes on a trellis like this. But you could also do cantaloupe on a trellis like this. This particular wire is called a cattle panel, and you can buy that at a farm and ranch store. It's a very heavy gauge galvanized steel. So, but now the caveat to the cantaloupe is that you would have to steal your wife's pantyhose and support that fruit. That's a good use for them. She'd probably be glad to get rid of them. So there you go. You could actually do watermelon and more. Probably the smaller watermelon. I don't know if you could do a black diamond with sporting. But that's one way that you can extend your garden. Sun. So they say 6 hours. I like to say 8 hours. Okay, this is not in Texas. This happens to be in Aberdeen, Washington, one Sunday morning. So light requirements of common vegetables. Okay, bright sunlight. Now here you for sure you're on the 8-hour scale. And beans and broccoli, cauliflower, tomatoes, potatoes. Note that the nightshade family, or Solanaceae, the tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, and peppers are all of that same family. So we probably won't talk about rotation today, but note that you rotate by families. So don't chase one after the other in the same planting spot. Okay. Here's some, if you're challenged with lack of sun, then here's some ideas that you might be able to try with less sun. And note that if you have a plant that has edible roots, like carrots or beets, or shoots like spinach and lettuce, then you might, you'll probably get by with less sun and still have a good usable crop. So especially at the school garden, I'm interested in how quick things grow, because those 5 beds that I showed you, the 4th and 5th graders will plant vegetables in those gardens, and I want them to be able to plant in September or February, March, and then pick the produce that same semester. So it's, or if you have children or grandchildren, it's great to have a vegetable that produces quickly, so they get excited and see the result. So the smaller children and the 4th graders, 5th graders come back the next week and wonder why the spinach is not ready to eat the week after they plant it. So quick maturity is important for school gardens and getting your children or grandchildren involved. Here's some moderate, so 60 to 80 days. And some of these are good for school gardens. I found that broccoli is a great product for school gardens in the fall and the spring. Tomatoes are not, because you plant them in March and they really come right in June after school's out. So not so much on. Okay. Nervous thing, sorry. So anyway, there's moderate. So you know, if you're trying to get kids involved, or just know that it's going to be a little longer for for maturity on these products. So what do you grow? I saw that just about everybody wanted to grow peppers, and most folks wanted to grow tomatoes. And if you don't eat peppers, then, or your mother-in-law doesn't eat peppers, then don't plant them. So just plant what your family likes or eats, and you'll be better off. So use recommended varieties for North Central Texas, and we're going to go to that website here. You might write that down: https://agriculture.tamu.edu. Okay. And at the Master Gardeners, we like to use websites. I got a question from my brother who lives in Washington about a product, and so I went to Washington State University, similar website as this, or you could go to LSU's website or Oklahoma State. Just know that the State College, Oklahoma State, Kansas State were land-grant universities, and that's part of their charter is to do horticulture information. Okay, so we're going to go to this website. All right, I'm looking at horticulture and several icons. I hope everybody sees that. And there's a icon down here that says vegetable resources. So we're going to click on that. And there are several things here that we're going to go through. Easy gardening fact sheets. So I'm not going to talk about all the different vegetables that you can plant and how to plant them if you have 1 hour, and that's not enough to do the whole 3-hour presentation. So here you go, peppers. We're going to click on that and know that, and you saw that there were several vegetables listed. I'm waiting. Okay, so here's the Easy Gardening website or information sheet, and know that Joe Masabny is assistant professor at Texas A&M. He's the one that I took the class on vegetables under in 2011, so he's been there a long time. And it'll tell you a little bit about the varieties, okay? Now just know that this is Texas, so we really have 5 regions in Texas. So all these may work and some may not for North Central Texas. The site selection, well-drained soils, the soil preparation, the planting, how you plant it. So it gives you description and pictures. Fertilizing, how often you should fertilize it. And watering, how you water it and care during the season. And then some disease and insect problems, okay? And so it's going to give you pictures, great. And when do you harvest? I like to harvest green peppers when they're red. I say they have less memory that way. I eat green peppers and I can taste them later on, but red ones that have turned red, they're better. Okay, how do you store them? So there's a number of different things you're going to learn and why to do this. So whatever vegetables that you want to plant, I recommend that you go to this website and pull up the Easy Gardening series and study that sheet. So there's other subjects that that are included in Easy Gardening series, such as mulching, I think there's one on solarization and, there it is, soil solarization and even aquaponics. So go there, have fun. Let's go back to the primary sheet. Vegetable varieties, okay. Now here's, so I clicked on vegetable variety selector. Okay, so here's the, actually there's more than 5 regions here. So we're in region B, North Central Texas. I'm gonna click on that and I can go down here and select all vegetable varieties. Okay, so I'm gonna click on that and it comes up with a list, recommended vegetable varieties for region B, North Central Texas. Okay, so I say that if you don't have history of a variety that you like to plant, I would take this, put it in your pocket when you go buy seeds or plants at the plant store, or buy from the seed catalog, and stick with these varieties. So and it's quite extensive. It's alphabetical, and so like here's tomatoes, and note that it has large tomatoes and medium-sized tomatoes. I like big beef is my favorite, but a lot of people like celebrity, and I like that too. But and there's a variety called Beef Master that I like so far as the taste of it. Now I use totally hybrid tomatoes because I have root knot nematodes in my soil, and so I'm looking for that disease-resistant in the initials that follow the tomato. It says I and B here. That's for indeterminate and determinate. So indeterminate, you can think of tomato vine. Determinate, think of tomato bush. So the tomato bush is going to mature and have most of its tomatoes in a fairly compact time period. The indeterminate will extend the season a little longer until it gets too hot for them to propagate. Okay, so there's others, and just to say, you can print this out from the website, download PDF right there, and you can take that with you. Okay, we're going to go back to a couple of strokes here. One other thing is the vegetable problem solver, and I'd like to show that a little bit. And note that there's kind of short list here, but tomato problem solver, and note that there's several different. So I clicked on tomatoes, and here, do I have a disorder of the fruit, ripe fruit, insect pest, leaf, stem, or root? So let's say a ripe fruit. Oh yeah. So here's one that just about all of us have experienced: blossom end rot, and it'll tell you give you a nice picture of it. It'll also tell you what causes blossom end rot. And so when I water, when I put an irrigation hose down beside my tomatoes, I face it into the soil, and I put mulch on top of it so that the water is not splashing up onto the tomato, the tomato plant. Okay, and also put calcium in the soil before I plant the tomato plant, and all that helps deter blossom end rot. Okay. I think we'll go back to the PowerPoint from here. Okay, remember https agri-horticulture.tanu.edu. Okay, so I said I use hybrid tomatoes. Do not confuse that with GMO. Okay, so here's an example of hybrid. There's nothing wrong with that child. Okay, and you've got to say that it's a hybrid. It was a selective breeding. Season. Okay, when do I plant each vegetable type? And in North Central Texas, I think that's really important because here we are, we're sitting between the first or the last frost in March and the first freeze in November or whenever it happens. So, and so between the flat frost in March and 90-degree temperature, sometimes is a short period of time. And just know that tomatoes will not set their bloom above 90 degrees. So once it is 90 degrees outside on a regular basis, the blooms are not going to set. So whatever fruit is on the vegetable or on the plant, that's your crop. And then in the fall, you know, we're fighting 100-degree temperature or 90-something, you know, 100-degree temperature in August and the November freeze. So you're kind of always caught. And so I think the sooner you can plant in the spring, the better. I plant onions in January. I use Martin Luther King Day with the students. They tend to remember that. And for onions, and Valentine's Day for potatoes and all the cold crops, the broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower. Okay, I do not plant cauliflower in the spring. I just do that in the fall. It does much better. Okay, so here's a sheet that I happened to get at Marshall Green. I'm not trying to advertise them. I think we can get this at Russell Feed and a lot of other garden centers, so wherever it is. But know that I like to point out here it says tomatoes March 17th to May 12th. And I'm telling you, if you wait till May 12th to put your tomato plants out, you will not get a crop. So I put them out after the big hailstorm, the Mayfest hailstorm destroyed a few of my tomatoes. So I thought I would experiment and replace them. Those tomatoes did not produce because it was above 90 degrees and the blooms did not set. So you might pen and ink change that. My tomatoes have been in the ground for 2 weeks now. So last year I planted on February 28th. Now I do some things and I'll show you some of that later that will cheat that or give me some frost protection. Okay. So there's all your other vegetables for the spring and vegetables for the fall planting dates. So asparagus, that's a one-time deal, and we've missed the mark there already. But if you're going to plant asparagus, go to that website, and it's a fairly complicated, labor-intensive method to plant them, but it works. I planted some 25 years ago, and I picked about 3 pounds of asparagus yesterday. Okay. Today I planted watermelons. Okay. And so there we have the dates. but I'm telling you that more important than the date is the temperature. So yesterday I went out and stuck a thermometer in my soil, and it said it was 80 degrees. And here's watermelon. The green dot is the practical temperature for planting. In other words, at that temperature, the seeds will germinate and grow. The black dot is ideal. So I'm not going to sit and wait until it gets to be 93 degrees to plant my watermelon seed. I planted them yesterday or today. So here we are at maybe 80 degrees on soil temp. So I'm really pretty good. Just know that if you try to plant, on the left side of those green dots, that you may not have success. I've used to plant about 6 rows of corn, and I would plant 2 rows early March, 2 rows mid-March, 2 rows late March, and frequently I'd have to go back and replant those that I planted in early March because the seeds didn't come up. So this, you have this as a handout, so you can grab that and print it out. It's a great guide, and I have not seen this at most places that I've been to, so it's kind of a unique chart, but it works. Temperature trumps the date, okay? Okay, transplants. Use transplants as often as you can to a limit, okay? I don't transplant okra and I don't transplant lettuce, and you'd also want to transplant on a cloudy day or in the evening so that the plant has a chance to establish before the hot sun hits it. And as my grandmother said, if you plant a plant, you water it. I don't care if it's raining. Water it in. You've got to get that soil to settle around the root structure of that little plant. Okay, plant at the same depth as in the pot. And this sample here is a tomato, and that's an exception to that rule. You can plant that tomato really all the way up to the foliage almost. Okay, and I'm going to show you a picture. This is I wanted to plant a Juliet, and this is the only ones that I could find. Juliet is a great tomato, very, very productive. But those long, lengthy things. So here's the solution to that. I dug a furrow or a ditch, and there's the root ball, and there's the plant. So it's this white stuff is calcium, okay, and that comes in a number of different sources. You can ask at the garden center. I happen to use dolomite because that's what I have a bag of it, okay. But here's the end result, okay. So I used the little 4-inch pot, the plastic pot, just to keep the foliage up off the ground. And then in a few days, it didn't need that anymore. It was chasing the sun. Okay. So with tomatoes, you can plant them just about as deep as you'd like. So here's some vegetables who start in propagation. I do tomatoes by seed, and I start them in about January 1st. I also do peppers and eggplant in my greenhouse. It's a homemade greenhouse, so it's nothing fancy. Okay, but by doing that, I get the varieties that I want. I'm not dependent upon the garden center buying tomatoes that the kinds that I like or have success with. Here's how I plant them. So I said I'd show you a little bit more about that. And actually, when I plant the tomato, it's small. I'll put a milk jug over the plant. and that gives me 2 or 3 degrees of frost protection. I'll put the wire cage around that. And then this is an irrigation hose. It's just black plastic pipe that I've drilled holes in with a drill, 1/8 inch. So you can buy a 100-foot section of that or a 50-foot section at the big box store. And those hoses, I have some that I've had for 15 years plus. So that runs down, and then mulch on top of that. And I like to drop the mulch on it when the jug's still over the plant so I don't hurt the plant. Okay, and then the final step is this is frost cloth on these in the background. So the frost cloth will give you 4 or 8 degrees of frost protection. Depends on the thickness of the cloth, but they're rated. But I think more important than the frost is this cloth gives me wind protection. Really lost more plants due to wind than I have to frost. So, and also that protects against the insects and critters and all that. So your dog's not going to step on the plant if it's encased in this multi-layer protection. Enough on that. Okay. The other, you get a general, when you're direct seeding, and most plants, beans and all those leafy vegetables, I like to use seeds. And the seed packet will tell you how far, but if you go to some of the stores that have bulk seed, like Russell Feed, Mike's Garden Center, I think Marshall Grain has some bulk seeds. It's much cheaper if you're going to plant a lot. And that's what I do for the school garden, because the kids planted quite a few different kinds of vegetables. Just note that as a general rule, about 3 times the width of the seed is how deep that you plant the seed. So with lettuce and spinach and carrots, especially the kids, I will go to extra lengths to prepare the soil, make it very smooth on top, and I'll have them scatter the seeds on top of the soil. Don't try to make little furrows and bury the seed, and then scatter compost or high filtered soil on top of the seeds. So that way you can get the whole crop at a good depth. Especially lettuce, it wants to be close to the sun. It's somewhat sun germinates, so it needs to have sun. And the kids, 4th and 5th graders, have great luck with those leafy vegetables. Okay, so here's soil. Okay, don't scrimp on your preparation. And the more heroic the soil preparation should be, the more, the smaller the plant. So I already talked about lettuce. That's one of the smallest seeds that we plant. Okay, here's where you can get a soil test. You can go to this website, soiltesting.tamu.edu. You can also call the Tarrant County Master Gardener help desk at this number, and they will send you a bag and an instruction sheet that you would collect. The instruction sheet tells you how to collect the sample and what to do with it. If you're watering from a well, you can go, I think, to this website and type in water testing. So there's a similar website for water testing, and I would highly recommend that you test your well water. the water, at least the shallow water well, mine is 80 foot and it's very salty. So it's going to restrict some vegetables. Here's the results from a soil analysis. Okay, this happens to be for the Heritage Elementary School garden. And note that we had added what they call dairy mix. It was a really great mix, but dairy tells me it's it's got a lot of animal waste in it, and phosphorus is the common issue with animal waste. It says that it's very high, so that's the call. Here's where you want to be, right here. The critical level is right here, and this is way over that. And down here it says don't add nitrogen for the next 5 years. So, and nitrogen's hard to get rid of. Our soil in North Texas has a lot of it. And okay, so here's nitrogen. It's way low. So, and typically with vegetable gardens, A&M will recommend that you fertilize the vegetable garden with nitrogen every month. I'd say especially onions. If you're growing onions and you want big bulb onions, you fertilize them with high nitrogen fertilizer every month. Okay. Now, an exception with tomatoes, I will water it in with a root stimulator or Miracle Grow, and then will not water or will not fertilize again until I see a tomato on the plant. So that tells me that the tomato's ready to make fruit. It's no longer interested in making leaves, and the nitrogen goes to fruit production. Okay. So soil preparation, bed amendments, pre-plant irrigate in the fall. That's pretty important. I will make a row and water it, and then plant the seed or drop the seeds, and then cover it up with dry soil. So do everything you can to make that soil nice and pliable. Okay. If I had to do it over with, my garden's about 10,000 square feet. I would have ordered back in 1990 about 100 cubic yards of compost incorporated. I would have been years ahead. Okay, so here's if you have clay soils, and many of us have clay soils, the best solution is add organic material. And I recommend 3 inches deep of compost, and 3 inches, 1 cubic yard will cover 100 square feet, 10 by 10, 3 inches deep, takes 1 cubic yard. So that's a good little measure. It's math's not exactly correct, but it's close. 100 square feet, 1 yard. Okay, if you have sand and it won't hold water, the solution, add organic material. Again, the 3 inches of compost and 1 cubic yard per 100 square feet. Okay, there's another soil test, and this one was done in 2016. That other one was done in 2020, and note it's still high in phosphorus, so we just can't get rid of it. Here's where I've prepared in January or December, getting ready to plant tomatoes. Tomatoes love compost. I will put 2 cubic feet per plant. So I've dumped compost in that row, about 10 wheelbarrows, 6 cubic feet in each row. And then I'll till it and plant the tomatoes. So that's what you do in the wintertime. You can garden in the wintertime here. Okay, again, improve clay soils. Here's some ways to cheat or fight against the frost is using row covers. Many of us don't have that much, so that may be more. But I have covered, in fact, I covered my onions before the 0-degree temperatures, and they survived very well. I just put the frost cloth over them. Luckily, it snowed on top of that. So here's another example. Here's my example of the jugs. Okay, so those jugs give me a little bit of protection. If it's going to frost or freeze at night, I'll put the lid on, but otherwise leave the lid off. And that's kind of a hole I dig. I've used a sharpshooter to dig the holes for tomatoes. And I put them 2.5 feet apart. Okay, we talked about the irrigation. We're going to point the irrigation down into the soil. You can also trim these lower limbs off so that the lowest limbs are some up 8-10 inches tall above the soil, because as it rains, it splashes soil up on these leaves, and that's when you get early blight. Okay. And there's again the frost cloth around tomato cages. To get the full protection, you have to seal up the top also. So, and here's what I use for irrigation. I have a little square-foot garden, and yeah, here's a picture of it. So when I plant those seeds, lettuce and carrots, etc., then I will set this timer to go. I set it at 5 minutes at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. and had great success with seed germination. So that was like early March. Okay, I think we're 5:50, is it? Do you have questions?
Okay, there are a few questions. We want to go ahead and talk about some of those. Let me see. Okay, someone is asking that, okay, they planted some seeds, mainly it looks like carrot and radish and things like that. And then those seeds sprouted, but then they died. What could be the problem?
Well, one of the most common problems is damping off. So you'll see a rotting right at the soil level, and that's moisture control. So if you can control the moisture, don't keep them too wet. That's why I do the watering at 5 a.m. because that way the soil dries out on top pretty quickly. And at 5 p.m., same thing. It's still light enough that the soil will, right at the top, will dry out pretty quickly.
Okay, so we want to keep the soil wet, but just not too wet, right?
No, not too wet, and it's called damping off. So they might look that up.
Okay, damping off.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and if anybody else has any questions right now, you're welcome to enter them into the chat box. Okay, the next question here, what type of mulch do you recommend?
Okay, so I buy, well, I make most of my own mulch, but at the school garden, we go to Alpine, and Alpine is in Southlake. It's like, or Living Earth, or the one out on the east or west Fort Worth, Silver Creek, and there's others. So I buy mulch or compost in a bulk, and just organic compost. Just know that when you buy compost from a place like that, or you make it yourself, that the compost process, the chemistry of it, it's consuming nitrogen at a very high rate. So whatever it is you're putting down is going to be nitrogen deficient. So you saw the soil test from Heritage. The nitrogen was way low, and I expected that because, you know, you dump that soil or that compost out, and it's hot. That tells me that it's consuming nitrogen, the chemistry of it, and you're going to have to add nitrogen to it. So I will add, in a wheelbarrow, 6 cubic foot, I'll add a quart or more of the high nitrogen fertilizer, 2100 or 2800.
Okay.
If you're gonna buy it by the bags, I like mushroom compost the best. That's what ex-agent, retired agent Bill Adams wrote the book, Tomato Lover's Handbook, and he uses mushroom compost totally in his garden. You buy it by the tractor trailer load.
All right. So mushroom compost
Yeah.
and then organic mulch, hardwood mulch,
Yeah.
or native hardwood.
Yeah, and the mushroom compost is organic too. It's really a mix that they use for mushrooms. So it's chicken poop and sawdust.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. What are your best tips for growing asparagus?
Asparagus? Yeah. So you start with a ditch that's 18 inches deep, and you fill that about a foot wide, 18 inches deep, and as long as you want it. You put the first 6 inches of compost, and then you lay the roots that you buy at the garden store or order, and then you put 6 inches of compost on top of that and water it in. So you're already, so I'm 6 inches short of the soil, native soil height. As the asparagus grows that season, you can start filling in from the soil that you took out of the hole. So at the end of the season, November, whatever, when it freezes, then you should be back to level. So you, over the 6 months or 8 months, as the little plants were growing, then you're pulling that soil back into the hole. And you know, the second year you probably shouldn't pick any of it. Well, let's say 1 year after you plant them, don't pick. The second year you might pick a few. It's really the third year that you can start picking quite a few. And you can pick it until it comes up the diameter of a number 2 pencil. When it's that small, quit cutting it. Let it grow, let it mature to full height, which is about 4 to 5 feet, and let it grow until it freezes, and then mow it down with a mower.
Okay. Some great asparagus tips. Okay, and then critter control. So squirrels, possums, bunnies, how do you control those?
Well, the chocolate lab works pretty good.
Okay, so get a big dog.
Yeah, but at our school garden, we have resident rabbits, and in those raised beds, I can put a rebar or a stick at each corner of that bed on the outside, and then wrap that with bird netting. And you can get bird netting at the garden store, and you can buy different sizes. Like, I know they have like 25 by 25, 15 by 15, but they also have 6 by 50. So 6 feet by 50 foot long. And that's typically what we use at the garden. And we'll just wrap around that garden. Don't have to over the top of it, because the rabbits won't find the bird netting. And that has saved our broccoli crop. Okay. At home, the jugs, when I plant broccoli in the spring, I'll put jugs over them when I first set them out, and that keeps the rabbits and the varmints off of them. in the fall, I'll put a little fence, rabbit wire that's in a round column or tube. Maybe it's 12 inches diameter and 12 inches high, and just set that over around the plant while it gets established.
Okay, great. So a physical barrier is probably the best for that.
Yeah, and those things last a long time. Milk jugs will last about 3 years, but you get 26 of them a year if you drink milk. They last for 2 weeks, right? And you get a gallon every 2 weeks. So.
Yep. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, so someone is asking about YouTube channels to subscribe to. So first I want to say, of course, subscribe to the Safe Tarrant Water YouTube channel and the Tarrant County Master Gardener YouTube channel. Both of our YouTube channels have tons of great resources. Is there anything else, Harold, that you like to watch on YouTube in terms of gardening or any other resources that you like to go to?
Well, my number one resource is the agri-horticulture, and that seems to answer. Now, I will also web search on the agri-horticulture website. So if I'm doing a web search, I'm going to select sources that are .edu. So I know that it's they're tested methods of gardening that I'm going to get reasonable answers that are true and not somebody's pie in the sky.
Yeah, definitely. You want to make sure that you're finding reputable resources.
Yeah, agri-horticulture is my first go-to. I have some books, but Neil Sperry has a good book, and Howard Garrett does organic gardening. They're good sources. The all-new Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew. So if you're into square foot gardening, I don't use the wood slats. I just use a string and nails or screws to outline the garden. That's what we do at the school garden.
Okay, great. Okay, well, it looks like that those are all the questions we have. Is there anything else that you wanted to share on your presentation?
Well, we're at 5 o'clock. Is that 7 o'clock, whatever it is.
We're pretty much done.
So disease control is important, and there's lots of, my favorite product is Basilicus thuringiensis, and you can buy that in a mix. If you have worms, then BT is going to kill them. And sometimes you'll see it in a bottle called Fertilize. So Basilicus thuringiensis, that's probably the go-to product. And this triple action is a good triple action plus. It has a neem oil and so this is you're doing several things with that. So that's what I like to do. When I have bugs on the tomatoes, like the leaf-footed stink bug, neem oil tends to kill them. So I'm just gonna, here's an example of root knot nematodes, okay? So, and there's lots of ways to, or a few ways to combat that. One is to use Kelvin rye. You do that in the fall, and then in the spring and January, February, kill it in. It's pretty laborious project, because this makes really huge root system, and it traps the nematodes. So it doesn't kill them all, but it reduces the population significantly. Okay. So another thing I use, plant mustard greens next to my broccoli, and the cabbage loppers seem to like mustard greens better. So that's kind of a trap crop. When I see cabbage loppers, the little green inchworms on the mustard greens, then I know it's time to spray the broccoli and the cabbage. Okay, so there's Bill Adams. He's been funny with his rifle. And there's a, yeah. So there's, if you have a infectious plant, just take it out. Don't leave it there amongst all your other products, you know. And at the end of the year, clean it up. Get that soil test, because, you know, you'll be surprised one way or the other. You might be pleasantly surprised that you're doing the right thing, but it'll confirm that. And you'll know what, because A&M will come back and tell you at what rate to add fertilizer and what kind of fertilizer to use. Okay? So I think that's pretty good. There you go, at the end of the season. That's not my garden, that's some engineer's garden. But hopefully in January, that's what your garden looks like, or something like that. You saw mine.
All right.
That's all I have.
Awesome. Well, we got one more question. What was that first pest control bottle that you showed? The one that started with a D?
It was BT, I think. Was that the Facilities Tarrant? Okay.
BT, Dipel, D-I-P-E-L.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right,
but it comes it'll come as a mix, and Fertilize is the name, and you'll see that on the shelf with the other products. That's a lot easier to use for most of us. You know, you put a 1 ounce in a gallon and spray it out of a hose, a pop-up sprayer. It's a little easier to use than this dry product that you admit. Okay.
Okay. All right. Looks like that's all the questions that we have. So I'm just gonna, let's see, put it back over to my screen so I can show some follow-up information. And so thank you for sharing all your wisdom with us, Harold. And thank you everyone for being here. Make sure to check your email afterwards so that you can get access to that Go and Grow rebate. And then we're also going to send out some handouts that Harold has provided that provides some supplemental information and is some of the stuff that he was talking about, some of those charts that he. So thank you so much again, Harold, and thank you everyone for being here, and have a great night. Thank you. Maybe we can meet live next time. That's right. Hopefully next time we'll be in person. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thanks. Bye. Bye.